Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this meeting of the California Commission on the State of Haight. I want to welcome you all to this, our fourth meeting, and I want to start by saying that closed captioning of this meeting is available. You can access that by clicking the button labeled Show Captions at the bottom of your screen. So with that, I would like to call this meeting of the California Commission on the State of Haight to order at 10:01 a.m. On Wednesday, April 26, 2023. Alec, can you call the roll, please?
Sure, just a quick note, it's 9:01 a.m.
Oh, sorry.
California.
Sorry, 9:01 a.m. 9:01 a.m. Sorry.
Okay, we'll call the roll. Chair Roybal.
Present.
Vice Chair Salcedo.
Present.
Commissioner Che.
Present.
Commissioner Cuellar. Not here. Commissioner Damsky.
Good morning, I'm present.
Commissioner Filer.
Present.
Commissioner Levin.
Present. Hi, everyone.
Commissioner Sanar.
Present.
And Commissioner Suthers.
Thank you, Alec. We do have a quorum, so we'll continue with the meeting. I want to review the agenda for today. Again, this is the fourth meeting of the Commission on the State of Haight. You may view the agenda by visiting the Commission's website at calcivilrights.ca.gov/Commission on the State of Haight and clicking on the button labeled Meetings and Agendas. We'll send the link to the agenda in the chat. Before reviewing the agenda, I would like to again review the process for public comment. First, the Commission is a public body, and an important part of being a public body is hearing from the public. To that end, this meeting and all future meetings of the Commission will be open to the public, and there will be opportunities for public comments during the meetings. To keep an orderly meeting, please make sure to comment only on the agenda item under consideration. If you have comments that are specifically related to an agenda item, please save your, that are not specifically related to an agenda item. Please save your comment for the item that says public comment on items not on the agenda. To submit a written public comment, you may email the Commission at csh@calcivilrights.ca.gov. We'll be monitoring this channel throughout the meeting. If you submit a written comment that pertains to an agenda item, we will read it aloud or summarize it when the public comment portion of that agenda item is open and before any vote. If the comment is not about a specific agenda item, we will read it aloud or summarize it at the end of the meeting during agenda item public comment on items not on the agenda. If you would like to speak at the meeting to deliver your public comment, you will have the opportunity to do so during the public comment portions of the meeting. You may request to speak on an agenda item by raising your hand on Zoom. If you're joining on a computer, you can raise your hand by pressing the raise hand button on the bottom of your screen. If you're on the phone, you can raise your hand by pressing *9. During the public comment portion, we will call on attendees who raise their hands to allow them to unmute and deliver comments. In the interest of time, we will limit verbal public comments to 3 minutes per person. With that, I would like to review some modifications that we have made to the agenda. Immediately after reviewing the agenda, we will move to agenda item 4 to discuss the draft of the Commission's annual report. We will not be having a report from the Civil Rights Department, so we'll be removing agenda item number 3. The other items that we will cover is we will approve the minutes of the last Commission meeting. We will do updates from both myself as chair and our subcommittees, and then any Commission member announcements, again, any public comment on items not on the agenda, talk about future agenda items, and then we will adjourn. Any questions from the commissioners on the agenda before we move to our first item? Okay, so let's move to our first item, which is discussion and action regarding the Commission's annual report. I'll give a little bit of a a brief of kind of where we're at and some of the things that we have done, and then we'll open it up for discussion. As you all know, by statute, this commission is required to issue an annual report that is due on July 1st. Both Bambi, Vice Chair Salcedo, and I worked with staff to draft the first draft of the report, which I will review and we can discuss in this meeting. We know you only received the report yesterday, so you will have time to look at the report after the meeting is over with more opportunities for input. We'll take your feedback from the discussion today and it'll be used to revise the report between now and our next commission meeting in May. In the May meeting, we will discuss the final draft of the report. And if we are ready, take a vote to approve it. I also encourage you to discuss the report in your subcommittee meetings. And if you have any feedback at that time, you can get that to staff, of course. So what I would like to do is to review the overall structure of the report, and then we'll open the floor for discussion. We'll also have time for public comment. So as you can see on the screen, Alec has shared his screen to give a little bit of an outline of what the report looks like. You also have the report in draft form. So chapter 1 is an introduction with some background, establishment of the commission and why we are producing the annual report. Chapter 2 includes the activities we will have engaged in since our first meeting on December 1st, which will include meetings of the full commission, the policy manual we've adopted, the officers, the subcommittees we've established, and some of the community outreach work that we've done, including the forums, which will have taken place by July 1st, listening sessions that have been underway, and any presentations that have been done during the commission meetings. And the other thing will be that is included in this chapter is the definition of hate with respect to the commission's work, which the commission discussed about the staff presentation provided by Deputy Director Monroe. Chapter 3 is the strategic plan, which includes the vision and mission of the commission and key goals and activities of the commission. To summarize what is in the draft, goal 1 is to provide a comprehensive accounting of hate activity in California. There'll be some background information there, and then key activities that the commission will undertake, understanding the limitations of existing data sets, collaborating with California versus Hate on data collection, proactively serving Californians around hate incidents and activity, and increasing access to data. Goal 2 is to develop recommendations for reducing hate crimes, a background on that, and then some key activities, reviewing research on prevention, evaluating existing practices, and identifying solutions for preventing recidivism. Goal 3 is to develop recommendations for enhancing the resources and support available for people and communities affected by hate. Again, some background around that, and then key activities, including understanding where the gaps are, supporting California versus Hate and community-based organizations, and providing recommendations to law enforcement. Then the chapter 4 is the conclusion, which and appendix, including the personnel of the commission and acknowledgement. Alec, did you have anything you wanted to add to that review?
No, that was great. Thanks for doing that, Chair Roygor.
So if there are any initial reactions or comments or high-level comments, because I know not everyone has had a chance to read and digest the report, we'll take those now. And again, please take the review of the report back to your subcommittees for you to discuss in your subcommittees. But I do see that we have some comments from commissioners. So let's start with Commissioner Che.
Yes, thank you so much. This is really helpful to see the outline, and I am one of those commissioners who has not had a chance to review the draft. Having just completed our civil rights report, one of the things that I think would be really important is to, in addition to the definition of hate used by the commission, is to have demographics, California's demographics including things like what percentage of our community identifies as immigrant, limited English proficient. These types of things would be really helpful in understanding best practices, policies to ensure, unfettered access to information and resources. And I think it would also help to identify where we might have gaps in terms of information and the experiences of those parts of our community. So thank you so much. Really great start.
Thank you, Commissioner Cheo. Alec is making note of that, and so that we can include that. So thank you. Commissioner Filer.
I did a brief review of it last night, and I just want to comment that I was very impressed, and I have thank you to everyone who's worked on it, because this is not an easy document to write. So, I will spend more time going into the depth of it all, but the overview of it all, when I looked at it last night, was pretty amazing. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Filer. Commissioner Damsky.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Alec, and everybody else who had a hand in writing this. I did have a chance to read the whole thing last night. I like how it has this comprehensive view, this big 50,000 elevator airplane view of what all our different committees are trying to do together, as well as the big picture. The one thing that I would like to see included in here that our Committee on Law Enforcement has started to discuss is monitoring online extremism and hate. I think that's an important piece of what's going on that fuels hate in our state and beyond. And I'd like to see that added in at some point. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for that note, Commissioner Damsky. Commissioner Levin.
Could I defer to Commissioner Sinar first? I think she may have had her hand up first.
Oh, sure. Commissioner Sinar.
I think I was second, but I'll take the invitation. Thank you, Commissioner Levin. So I did have a chance to do a preliminary read of the report, and I just also wanted to express my admiration for those who put it together. I think it does do a nice job of laying out some core themes for our work, and also tracking the progress that's been made so far with kind of just developing the commission. So I think it's excellent. I think the particular things that I thought it did really well was first, in terms of kind of capturing the content of our prior deliberations on defining hate crimes and hate incidents, and also suggesting that those are working definitions. That section of the report struck me as really good. I think the emphasis on research and the prioritization of first kind of getting a handle on the problem through as much evidence as we can seemed exactly right. And I think it's exactly the right thing for us to be doing, rather than trying to offer policy recommendations without yet having been able to do that. So I think that's also excellent. And I also think that it does a good job in both recognizing the role of law enforcement while also expressing the input from communities about distrust in law enforcement, and the need to look for measures of hate crime prevention and response that are non-carceral in nature. So I think on all of those points, the report to me is excellent. I have two small comments, and these are actually quite small, but I think I'll just share them now and then leave it to the staff and others to figure out whether or not it's worth adjusting. But one has to do with hate incidents, and I think, as I mentioned, I think it's the way that hate incidents are brought into the scope of our work and explained in the report is excellent. I thought it might be helpful to provide maybe just a little bit additional on why it is that we are focusing on hate incidents, and perhaps pointing to the Stop API hate incident data and the fact that so much of what our communities are experiencing does fall within the realm of hate incidents, and that being part of what prompted the development of the commission, I think could be said. Not essential, because I do think the broader ideas is generally captured, but if we wanted to elaborate on that and specifically to make it clear to those reading the report that this is not an expansion of the role, but it is something very much that was top and center of mind for legislators establishing the commission and for the communities who advocated for it. And the other comment is, again, a small one related to the vision statement and the mission statement of the commission, which I think is, again, excellent. But in terms of how we frame what our kind of 10,000 foot or, our broad vision going forward, I think the current language refers to eradicating hate. And I wondered whether an alternative framework might focus kind of in more maybe affirmative or positive language about protecting communities from hate. It seems like it is both more in terms of the kind of attainable vision of what we can do and also sort of centers communities. But in any event, it's not that I want to get into wordsmithing language. But those were just some small initial thoughts of which are not in any way things that need to be addressed. But I thought I would flag those, and mostly I just wanted to commend the staff for putting together a report that I think really reflects our deliberations really well. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Sinar. And I want to also emphasize that something that you said in the last commission meeting is something we wanted to make sure to include, which is, although we have now with the launch of California versus Hate, non-law enforcement mechanisms to do reporting and tracking and data collection, we heard you loud and clear that we also need law enforcement to be better at collecting that information and providing that. So that we wanted to make sure that was included in the report. And I hope that you see that there. Commissioner Levin.
Thank you. And as they say in law school land, I incorporate by reference all my fellow commissioners' observations. I really thought it was right on target. And you don't always have commissions that flow like this. So just like a nice dessert, understand that this is a nice thing. Couple quick things. First, I like that we have these definitions laid out. I'd like to have just some tinkering to make it coextensive with what we're seeing today, which is targeted violence, and it bleeds over into different manifestations. Let me give you an example. When we saw, for instance, a record month for anti-Black hate crime, we also saw trending online, BLM, Antifa, socialist, and we saw manifestations of violence that were directed against kind of that trio, but coming from the same reservoir. So, so there was something when we were working with the legislature, and they asked specifically, and they had a lot of questions, and I think they got an idea similar to what is in there, and it's the report is very good. Something with the anchor of what we've been looking at with respect to data collection for some time. The 36 groups that are covered by state and FBI data. But to the extent that teachers are targeted, or election workers, or librarians when they're trying to hold reading hours, I want to make sure, just as the Supreme Court said with regard to federal legislation, and this is something that I quoted when I was before the legislature on this, that we need something as wide, we need a definition and operations as wide as the sweep allows. So I think you did a very good job, or this the staff folks did a very good job, but we might want to consider just tweaking that a bit. So that's something. The other thing too that I think we should, and it's in there, but civil liberties. Civil liberties must be extended to all Californians, even ones that we don't agree with. And that's something as well that I thought would be useful. One last thing, I think there should be some reference to the latest data that's available, with whatever caveats we may have. It doesn't have to be an overwhelming multi-page part, but we have official data from California. We also have groups that work in California that may have data relating to events in our state that impact various groups. So to the extent that we could put something in there, I think it's worthwhile, particularly when we have an FBI report that was just supplemented that shows a record for 2021. And again, for 2022, it's city by city and group by group. LA very high, Sacramento looks like it has a record. LA may have a record, probably not, but other cities marginally down. So something that captures kind of what we're going to do more of later, because we do have data that's out there, and I think that's important to frame the report, because this is a continuing problem that I think that what data would do is would help with the contours of what we're trying to accomplish, saying this is what is happening and this is why we're doing this. But just excellent job, and an excellent job under very I know rapidly rapid deadline circumstances. So thank you, Alec, and the folks that really it shows the level of work that was put into this. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Levin. And I will point out that one of the things that we did talk about when we started to draft this plan was to make sure of the last point that you made, that we are trying to collect as much data as possible and to involve community-based organizations who are engaged in that work and not rely solely on any government agency that might be collecting that information, but that to really have a much wider view of that. Because I think one of the things that I think I have that the staff will this will sound so familiar to the staff in my conversations with them, is there is a lot of data being collected, but not everyone knows where it is and who's doing it and what kind of data they're collecting and if there's a standard. So I think that is definitely one of the things that we want to help figure out in our work, is to really try to wrap our arms around as much of it as possible, so we have the best picture of what's happening in our state. So thank you for your comments.
And thank you so much, Chair, because there are communities that are not picked up with official data, and that can be supplemented. And we've seen it with some of the work of folks that are sitting here on this panel now. So thank you so much, Chair. I really appreciate it.
Sure. Commissioner Salcedo.
Yes, thank you so much again for this outline and presentation with this. I think in the sort of like overall skeleton, we need to sort of like give a little context as to how in some ways institutional violence, right, translates into interpersonal violence. It also translates into hate. And what I mean by that is, obviously, we probably are not allowed to mention, like how since the previous administration, right, like all the hate that was portrayed really translated into, anti-Asian hate, and trans people, right? Like, 2021 was a record number of murders of trans women specifically last year. So, there was since then, right? Like, just people who deliver these messages of hate are more blunt, are more like in your face. Like people have become, I don't know how you say it, como sinvergüenza. How do you say that? Like there's no filters. There's no like.
They have no shame.
There's no.
They're without
yeah,
shame. They
they're
don't
not-
care about
they
the
have-
consequence.
Yes, thank you. They have no shame to really say that, they're racist, that they are, like all of these things that obviously generate the hate that ultimately translates into the violence, right? And so I think we have to sort of like mention that in some kind of way, right? Also, I mean, obviously, I think Commissioner Adamski mentioned, social media, right? So like it's like this trickle effect, right? That people are just being blunt like that, and through social media also is being generated and all of those things. I think we need to give like a context, right? Like why is it that hate violence has been just more rampant in our communities. I think we also want to mention in some of the recommendations or some of the goals that we're talking about. We want to ensure that we include storytelling into some of these, right? Like the importance of storytelling and how we are going to be able to ultimately change people's minds and hearts, right? And I think there has to be like a strong component of media, right? And not just social media as we know it, but also just media in general. But there is also community led, right? That not necessarily these big firms that they always hog things, right? That there's certainly a collaboration, that there's certainly community involvement, and that there's certainly that communities who have been impacted are able to tell their own stories and produce and disseminate those stories. And so I just wanted to like mention that. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair Salcedo. I would say that not only is the way you mention it, that the folks who are perpetrators of hate are seeing vergüenza or without shame, but they're muy orgulloso about it, right? They're kind of proud to be engaging in that kind of activity. So thank you for that, bringing that up. Commissioner Sinar.
Yes, just very briefly, I wanted to just echo actually the point that Commissioner Salcedo just made about context of institutional and state violence. While that may not be the direct charge of a commission, I do think a little context on that would be helpful for framing, especially because we often do hear from communities that they don't want to see interpersonal violence and hate violence as something entirely separate from state violence, and often the experience of those two forms of violence are interrelated. Another kind of practical way of building on that point in some form in the report might also be to note that alongside our commission, the state has also created other commissions, like the commission looking to reform the penal code, which is more directly addressing criminal justice issues, kind of writ large, and also the Commission on Reparations. And I think that context is just to say that we are part of a set of initiatives that the state has adopted, recognizing kind of the experiences of the criminal justice system that our communities have often experienced. So there might be a pretty straightforward kind of concrete way of including that point and some of that broader context.
Thank you, Commissioner Sinar. Commissioner Levin.
just wanted to chime in on compliments for our vice chair, but this on a slightly different avenue. When she was talking about this hate that is out there and brazen and ubiquitous, she is exactly right with respect to when we see certain folks, high-level influencers, whether they're broadcast cable folks or politicians. We see it. We just have some data in there from a new article that I co-authored, and it's very important that get addressed. In other words, we have not only various manifestations of prejudice, but it feeds other manifestations. And what we are seeing is this stuff is staying higher longer in different strata, whether it's on the streets or online. And we saw, for instance, one very popular broadcast cable anchor take prejudice that was coming from just a handful of folks on the very fringes of the internet, and then giving this a forum what was then regurgitated back. And what that has done is it has done two things. It has created an elevation of hate against particular groups with respect to different manifestations. And it's also made it more resilient because now there's a reservoir of this stuff. So everything that folks have been saying about how it's not only brazen, but it now is warehoused, available anytime. And that is so important. That's why, in particular, and this will be my last comment on this, but I think it's very important. We have seen this with respect to the transgender community of which our vice chair belongs. And it is disgraceful. We are seeing these conflictual protests, and at the same time, we are seeing this increase in violence against the transgender community, the gender non-conforming community, as well as LGBTQ mixed, LGBTQ mixed rather. And we have to make sure that we call it out. And I want to make sure that for those who are not on the commission, in this state, the law protects people on these bases. And this commission, I don't speak on behalf of the commission, but I can tell you from the zeitgeist of being around these wonderful people, including the staff of the Civil Rights Division, the best of California, we stand with these communities, and the law protects these communities in California. And it's very important that we call this out, and I stand with you, Vice Chair, and thank you for bringing that up.
Thank you, Commissioner Levin. Vice Chair Salcedo?
Yeah, thank you so much. Appreciate your comment, Commissioner Levin. But I did want to bring, the current state of trans, right? As we know, they are about 36 different states who are actively enacting anti-trans legislation, right? And that is contributing to separating families, right? In other words, families who actually do support young people who may be trans or gender non-conforming are being criminalized as well. And so what we know is happening is that there's an influx of people coming to the state, right? Because they have this idea that the state of California is more open or more inclusive and all of that. But, the reality is there's still a lot of work that needs to happen in our own states. And so we could also anticipate that because more transgender, non-conforming, and intersex people will be coming to our states, right? That the hate incidents and hate crimes may increase, right? And so we need to say something about that too, right? That just kind of like what Commissioner Levin was saying, right? That we as a state are to protect, right? individuals who are part of the transgender, non-conforming, intersex community who are coming here, right? Because they are coming here. And so we need to make sure that in some ways, again, we change people's minds and hearts, right? Because what is happening in other states, right? Even here in California, depending on where you are, right? Like, you know, there's a lot of super conservative and extremist, you know, people who live in this state, right? And so obviously, you know, most people who are transgender and conforming or intersex are going to gravitate to go to the bigger cities, right? And so we need to make sure that there are also resources to support organizations that have programming and that have the type of support that our community needs. So just wanted to make sure that we do mention something around the reality that is happening right now, how we are going to prepare ourselves to address some of the issues that are happening.
Sure. Thank you, Vice Chair Salcedo. And I will just point out that I think that we will do that in this initial report from the commission. What we're trying to do around the framing of this first report is to set up the future reports so that we can make sure, because, you know, we've only been around since December and there's so much to get our arms around. So I really appreciate all of the commissioners and their suggestions so that we can make sure to include those things, but also be mindful that we are going to be taking a much deeper dive in future reports, because we'll have more time and hopefully more and better quality data that we're going to be able to access. I think one of the things that I'm most excited about that around the identification in this report will bring is the gaps. So getting to what you were talking about, Vice Chair Salcedo, is that even though California has a lot of laws that protect many parts of our communities, there is simply just not data or accurate data that reflects the experience of those communities. And so I'm hopeful that as we continue our work in the commission, as we identify what those gaps are, we'll be able to commission empirical research that will help us drive policy recommendations, because I think one of the things that all of us that want to do is to make sure that we have the data that is going to lay the foundational groundwork for us to create lasting impact in the state. Commissioner Damsky, we'll take one more comment from you, and then we'll see if there are any other comments and then have public comment.
Thank you,
Commissioner
Chair.
Damsky.
I want to thank Vice Chair Salcedo for opening this particular part of our conversation. And what is, I feel like, oh my gosh, how have we missed this? We've been talking about hate crimes and hate incidents. We haven't really been talking about hate speech, and that's what we're talking about here right now. And so I'd like to see somewhere in our report a discussion about the difficulty differentiating between freedom of speech and our First Amendment and hate speech, and how, I don't know what our commission can do about that, but I think we can't avoid mentioning that there is there's a gap there that about what we can do and what we can address. And we may not be able to stop hate speech, but we should certainly mention it and talk about it. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much, Commissioner Damsky. I want to see if there are any other comments about the report from commissioners before we move to public comment. And also keep in mind that one of the things we're asking you all to do is to talk about this in your subcommittees. So there'll be additional time for you to read the report and digest it and see if anything else comes up. But I want to see if there are any other comments now before we take public comment. All right, thank you, commissioners. And we'll now entertain public comment from any folks who would like to express them. First, I'll ask if there's any written public comment that has come in via email.
I don't see any written public comment from email.
All right, thank you. We'll take public comment from those attendees. And I see that we have one public comment. Is that correct? One
That's
request.
what it looks like, correct?
Welcome, Greg. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you. First, I want to thank the department staff for developing this outline. It is right now, it's the first time I've seen it, so I can't comment very much. But there are 2 points I would like the commission to consider. One is I would hope that the report and all the work of the commission pays some particular attention to hate crimes against people with disabilities, which of course intersect with every other community. And anti-disability hate crimes are the invisible hate crimes. For example, when you compare the U.S. Department of Justice Bureau of Justice Statistics estimate of anti-disability hate crimes annually, which is about 40,000 a year, and which in itself is a great underestimate because it does not count any hate crimes against people with disabilities that occur in institutions, nursing homes, prisons, and I don't think anybody would think their prisons and nursing homes are free of hate crimes. Compare that to, but taking that 40,000 figure and comparing it to the figure of what law enforcement agencies actually report, we find that law enforcement agencies are reporting less than 0.5% of the estimated actual number of hate crimes. That's nationally. Here in California, 2 years ago, like statistics, there were only 12 anti-disability hate crimes in the state, and that count actually represents some progress. The typical number over the years has been 3 or 4. So I hope there will be some particular attention to that. The other is a more general comment that I think the outline should specifically include recommendations to the legislature, which was one of the goals of our organization, the ARC, and I'm sure many other organizations in supporting the creation of the commission. And that would be both supporting and opposing particular bills and particular ideas. One that I hope you will take a look at this year is opposing the concept of increasing penalties for hate crimes as something that will not help and will just cause more problems. There is a bill that would do that. Most of the civil rights groups are staying off it, not taking a position because they know it's not going anywhere. I think philosophically, if for no other reason, the commission should maybe be less cautious than the advocacy groups are being, and to say that is a bad idea, and the legislature should not do that.
Thank you, Greg. Greg, do you know the bill number off the top of your head?
AB 32.
AB 32.
Right.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Is there any other public comment? And thank you for those comments, Greg, and those notes. Very much appreciated. All right, there is no action that we are taking today regarding the annual report. We will review the final version of the annual report at our next commission meeting, and I will say that we'll get it to you in advance for you to read it and have the time to digest the final version. Again, I want to remind you to please discuss in your subcommittee meetings in case anything else comes up, and give that feedback to staff. So I want to go back to item number 2 on our agenda, and I want to say thank you again. And before I get to item number 2, I also want to just thank the staff, in particular, Alec Watts and Adam Romero and Becky Monroe, for really providing a lot of hours of work in creating the draft. I also want to thank our colleague, Vice Chair Salcedo, who took time and hosted the staff and myself to put together the outline of the report and start to think about how we wanted this first report to be constructed as we look at about the future of the work of the commission. So thank you, Vice Chair Salcedo. Let's go ahead and move to item number 2, which is approval of the minutes. If you'll, those were sent out to you in advance. Also, we'll put the link to the minutes in the chat. If you need to get to them that way, they're available on the commission's website. And I want to, open it up for any discussion about the minutes before we take public comment on them, and then we'll move to a motion and a vote. So any comments or edits to the minutes from the commissioners? Is there any public comment, written public comment about the minutes?
No written public comment. It looks like we have one person who raised their hand on Zoom though.
I see that that's Greg. Greg, did you have a comment on the minutes?
Yes, there was a reference in the minutes to a bill that I mentioned that we are supporting and of course would like commission support for. The number was wrong. It's not AB. I don't remember what the incorrect reference is, but the correct reference is AB 449.
Thank you for that correction. Greg will make that a note of that. Any other, see no other public comment, I will entertain a motion from one of the commissioners to approve the minutes with that noted edit.
So moved.
I'll
Thank you,
second that.
Commissioner Filer. Thank you, Commissioner Damsky as a second. All those in favor, please say aye. Or actually, we'll do a roll call vote. Alex?
Sure. Chair Roybal,
Approved, aye.
Vice Chair Salcedo,
Aye.
Commissioner Shea,
Hi.
Commissioner Cuellar, absent, Commissioner Damsky,
Aye.
Commissioner Filer,
Aye.
Commissioner Levin,
Aye.
Commissioner Sinar,
Aye.
Commissioner Suthers, is not here.
Thank you, Alec. The minutes are approved with that edit. Let's move on to item number 5 on the agenda, which is updates from the chair and subcommittees. I have a few updates and announcements to give you. So I'll go ahead and go first. Just a reminder, the next commission meeting will be on May 24th, and we hope to approve the final version of our annual report then. So again, stay tuned for the draft to be coming to you in advance of that meeting. I also want to introduce formally to the commission and to the public our newest staff member who will be helping with commission business and supporting not only the administration of the commission, but our research efforts. I want to welcome Monica Chavez. Monica is honored to have recently joined the Civil Rights Department as an Associate Governmental Programs Analyst. Monica uses she, they pronouns, and as a first-generation Latinx, they're excited to be working with this department and commission. Growing up, Monica witnessed firsthand challenges that many marginalized communities face. This has fueled their passion for social justice and equity. They received a bachelor's degree from Western Washington University as a triple major in philosophy, sociology, and political science. Their studies focused on race, gender, ethics, organized crime, the United States legal system, and social movements and policing. While there, they were also the logistics director of TED times WWU, co-coordinator of the Western Washington University Legal Information Center, and co-coordinator for Law Advocate Street Law. They're eager to join us and pursue their passion for equity and social justice. So I just want to welcome Monica to the commission. Welcome, Monica.
Thank you. I am excited to be here.
We're excited to have you join us. And thank you for all the work you've already done on behalf of many communities. And we're excited to have you back in California. A couple of other things. Our next meeting on the 24th, following the commission meeting at 11:30 a.m. on that day, we will host our first community forum. Everybody get excited for that. And I want to thank Commissioners Cuellar and Commissioner Filer for planning and setting that up. Commissioner Levin and Stop AAPI Hate, Commissioner Che's group, will present on the state of hate in California. The Civil Rights Department staff will also discuss resources available for individuals in communities impacted by hate following the presentations, we will receive public input, facilitated public input, because part of our charge at the commission is to use those forums as a way to gather that input. So again, thank yous to Commissioners Filer and Cuellar for that. Commissioner Filer, I think you're going to spend more time in the subcommittee report talking about it, so stay tuned for that. And then finally, we encourage, in terms of the commission, we encourage all of you to publicize that forum to your networks. We're going to be posting a flyer to the commission website that you can distribute to your networks. Again, Commissioner Filer will ask you to do that in their report coming up shortly. And I think the only other thing that I want to report out on is that the official launch of the California versus Hate resource line, which we've talked about and staff has informed us about, is going to be taking place in Sacramento the morning of May 4th. If you happen to be there and would like to attend, please let staff know. Staff sent out an email about the press conference. If you could publicize that to your networks, that would be great. Also, I just want to recognize Commissioners Sinar and Levin, who each recently published research articles in the Journal of Crime and Criminology. Commissioner Sinar's article discussed the approaches to hate crime prevention, and Commissioner Levin's article reviewed hate crime trends. Commissioner Suthers is moderating a panel today on the rise of hate in the world and how we can address it, which is why Commissioner Suthers is not with us this morning. The event will be recorded and we'll send out the recording of that information to the commissioners. And that is all of my update and report for today. Let's move on to the subcommittee on data and research. Commissioner Levin and Sinar. You're on mute, Commissioner Levin.
Thank you so much. And just let me say, it is a real joy to work with this committee. Alec and Professor Sinar, thank you so much. Had I known when we had this, in our heads that we'd put this kind of commission together, to get it like this was exactly what I had hoped the World Series would look like. So thank you all for doing this. Anyway, real briefly, the things that we were looking at were basically twofold. One is, what are the substantive areas that we want to impact research on, and recognizing prevention, but also recognizing that sometimes prevention can be murky. A fire starts somewhere and then we see it spread. So at what point does something become prevention? And what point does something become response? But so that was something. Then looking specifically substantively within those frameworks, what are areas that we should concentrate on, particularly ones that may not have been addressed before, but also recognizing that there might not be a lot of research to build on in certain areas that are relatively pioneering. So that was something. The other thing I think that was important in what we were looking at was trying to get it structured with regard to the time frames that we were in. So looking at research that we'd like to start, but recognizing that this will be a multi-year effort, which requires a little bit of, I don't want to say forecasting, I don't think it got to that, but that's what we were looking at. Where are the areas where there is the greatest need for research, with a concentration, but not an exclusionary one, with respect to prevention, and then getting it done on some very tight time frames, and looking at some other entities that have either produced research or produced types of platforms that delivered this research to the multivariate audience that we're looking at. And I'm going to defer now to Professor Sinar, and if I could just incorporate by reference not only a mention of her article, but you won't be disappointed. Every time I get to appear on a panel with her or see an article of hers, it advances our area. And that doesn't mean you have to agree with her on everything, but if you could take a look at her article, I think you will be very impressed, and a lot of great food for thought. Professor Sinar.
Thank you, Commissioner Levin. I really appreciate that, and also really appreciate the opportunity to work with you and Alec Watts and everyone on this commission. I actually have not much of substance to add. I think Commissioner Levin captured it. We are looking, continuing this process of identifying research gaps and then exploring partnerships with a number of different research institutes that can help us plug those gaps. So that's been the continuing work of the commission. I think we've made some progress and are continuing to explore particular research projects that can help us as a commission. And just for that reason, I think as some of you have already shared the kinds of needs that you're finding in your work, but as you come across gaps and areas where you would hope for particular additional studies or research, please do share them with the staff, and that can help us inform what we continue to look at as priorities. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Sinar and Commissioner Levin, for that report and for your articles. I can't not wait to read them. So I'm excited to see your work in action. Let's move on to our next subcommittee, which is Subcommittee on Policy Recommendations. Commissioner Che.
Yes, thank you so much. So our subcommittee is on policy and best practices. And I want to thank Commissioner Cuellar, who couldn't be here today, and also Director or Alec, I should say. And just as a reminder, our charge was to develop recommendations for promoting mutual respect in California, and which includes recommendations for training on state officials on best practices and recognizing and responding to acts of hate. And so what I wanted to share on behalf of our committee is that we wanted to really focus on the fact that we have acknowledged that we have some data. And I think it's important to have composite data, which also includes working with organizations who have been doing the work in terms of responding and preventing hate in our state and across the country. And so it's really helpful to hear how the Data and Research Subcommittee is approaching this. Two things that I want to say about that, which is we are in the process of framing our policy and best practices review on two levels. One is rapid response. So what do we do in the wake of a hate incident? What is the responsibility of government, and in particular, our state leaders? What is in place in terms of emergency action plans? What are the government agencies that have a specific role in coordinating efforts? In our experience, we have a state that has uneven infrastructure. And so something like, what's the role of state agencies, but what's the role in working with local government and doing a county by county assessment? So those are some of the things that I think we're exploring and looking at. And obviously we are, the second level is on the prevention side, and in the ways in which community-based organizations are closest and the most trusted by disproportionately affected communities. And so that work really needs to be built out in terms of ongoing lines of communication and sharing of information, including best practices, including outreach and education and understanding what the barriers are to reporting and to seeking help. I think that one of the requests that we have as a subcommittee is for commissioners to share with staff organizations that you are currently working with that are engaged in policy best practices. This way we can make sure to reduce redundancies. We've also started engaging with key government agencies that I wanted to lift up, which includes the Office of Emergency Services. Obviously, we'll be working with the Civil Rights Department. We'd also like to work closely with the Attorney General's office. I think those are the top priorities at this moment. But that is our request at this time, is to share that with Alex. So again, we can at least join forces, or we can share information without being redundant. The final thing that we wanted to also offer up is that part of working with community-based organizations that are closest to the problem and have the trust of the community is to grapple with root causes. If we don't have a shared analysis of what is driving hate, it will be very difficult, I think, to come together around policies and recommendations. And so that is critically important, in addition to what is happening, what is, of course, driving, whether it's waves or periods of heightened targeting by elected officials, whether it's politicized rhetoric, scapegoating of all nature, economic, public health, and national security. These are things that I think we have to really have a shared analysis of in order to put forth best practices and policies to address it. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Chang. Any questions? All right, let's move to our next committee, which is the Subcommittee on Recommendations for Law Enforcement. And today that report will be given by Commissioner Damsky.
Thank you, Chair. I am pleased to present this our subcommittee's report on recommendations to law enforcement. I have some pretty extensive notes here that were provided by Commissioner, I forgot his last name, Southers. At our last meeting, we discussed the draft commission report that we reviewed earlier today and the need to have a strategic plan. So we'll be working with our staff moving forward on that. At our last meeting, we had two speakers from UASI, which stands for Urban Areas Security Initiative, Craig Zitzik and Judy Traversero. We discussed various grant programs that might be used to support law enforcement education and awareness efforts, such as the Targeted Violence and Terrorism Protection Grant. We talked about connecting with the Center for Prevention and Partnerships. There's a connection there we have with someone named Michael Brown. We talked about the various UASI groups around the state and how the San Francisco UASI is a 12-county footprint, which is focusing on leveraging grants, targeting hate with evidence-based strategies, networking with schools and faith-based communities, addressing online misinformation campaigns, minimizing redundancies, and making domestic violence extremism a priority. There are I forget how many UASI groups there are all over the state, but there are many, and each one has a certain number of counties that it oversees. So one of the things we talked about with these folks from UASI was looking at cross-sectoral training opportunities. We talked about partnering with the state's 5 UASI fusion centers. There's a $2 million a year fund that's available which is not a whole lot, but it's something to start with. And one thing that was of interest to our commission to our committee was that UASI grants can fund post-certified training, meaning training certified for officers post-academy. We also talked about a website called Moonshot, which is a tech-driven solutions provider that harnesses the power of the internet for good, develops new technology and methodologies to expose threats, disrupt malicious actors, and protect vulnerable audiences online. It keeps people behind the data in mind always, and working to end online harms is the means to making communities, governments, and businesses safer, both online and off, not only in California, but around the world. One thing that came up in our meeting was that when citizens in Oakland and San Francisco communities were asked what their biggest threat is, their response was law enforcement. This was a big education for us. So if we are looking for folks to report hate crimes and hate incidents to law enforcement, and they see law enforcement itself as a threat, that really underscores the means for alternative reporting options. One of the things we learned is that of all the UASI funds offered through, I believe it's the Department of Homeland Security, 18.5% of those funds go to the state of California. The UASI folks talked about possibly partnering with the California Specialized Training Institute as an option for post-certification training. We also talked about a federal grant called Securing the Cities program, which may be another option for funding. And the possibility of our commission recommending statewide training, additional statewide training for post-certification officers, and that perhaps the California Office of Emergency Services could take the lead on that. So those are our notes. Do we have any questions?
Any questions for Commissioner Dance? Commissioner Levin?
Hi.
Hello, and thank you for all the work you're doing on this. And on a personal note, thank you for being you. Could you just give me a little bit more detail about what UASI is? Who's running it? Is this governmental? Where's it headquartered? That kind of thing.
My understanding of UASI, and I may ask Alec to fill in some of these details because it was new to me at this meeting, is that it's, I believe it's federally based. There are UASIs all over the state of California. They're more heavily concentrated around larger urban areas than they are in more rural areas. And I had to look up more information about it myself this morning, because when we were talking about it in our committee, Commissioner Suthers was very familiar with it since he has a law enforcement background, and it was new to me. Alec, is there anything you can add here?
Commissioner Dembski, I did notice that ex officio member Abby Browning just dialed in, and I feel like she'd be best prepared to explain UASI to us.
Oh, great. Thank
Commissioner
you.
Browning, do you want to give us
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you. I work for for those that don't know, I work for the Governor's Office of Emergency Services. We are charged with distributing those funds to the UASI areas in California. And so they come down from Homeland Security. It stands for Urban Area Security Initiative. It came out of the September the 11th events that happened many years ago. And it is a way to coordinate all of our urban areas that are designated by census data with law enforcement to try to get everyone to talk to each other and work together. There's a lot of grant money that comes through that for education, for training, not only of law enforcement, but citizens for our schools, as Commissioner Dansky mentioned. And the Bay Area UASI, the leader there, Craig, is the ex officio leader, if you will, of the UASIs in California. They talk to each other and get together. The areas that exist right now are Anaheim, Santa Ana, Bay Area, LA, Long Beach, Riverside, Sacramento, and San Diego. The problem with the UASIs, in my opinion, is that they are focused on the urban areas. They don't go out into the non-urban, the rural areas. And as you all know, as well as I do, hate crime is everywhere. And so while it is an excellent way to get in and work with some of those communities and get education and training, also, the Specialized Institute Training Institute is run through Cal OES as well. It's how we train our emergency services, our first responders, police officers, firefighters on things like how to respond to a hazardous waste spill, how to do things like that, as well as the emergency management system in a whole. And so we have post-certified trainings that we offer there as well.
Thank you. Anything else, Commissioner Damsky?
Not for me, unless there are other questions.
Great, thank you for that report. Let's move on to our final subcommittee report today, which is the Subcommittee on Community Forums. Commissioner Filer.
Thank you. I'm doing this report on behalf of myself and Commissioner Cuellar, who could not be here today. As you already have mentioned, we are looking to create our first public forum, which will follow our meeting on May 24th at 11:30. I want to, first of all, thank Alec and the crew team who have been critical in helping us to create this public forum. I think we mentioned last time we had our first listening session, which has helped us create and look at what we need to present in the first public forum. We're very fortunate that Commissioner Che is going to have somebody from her AAPI organization present, and Commissioner Levin will present. And also in what we've been talking about, wanting to be data driven at that forum, we're going to be having information presented on what is happening on hate in our state. And I just want everyone to know this is our first public forum. So it may not be perfect, but we're going to use this as a platform and look at how we can keep improving what those public forums look like. And we will also keep working on our listening sessions to give our larger state communities an opportunity to share with us what's really happening on the ground around hate. So I think that's really all I have to present at this moment. Any questions?
Any questions for Commissioner Filer? Thank you so much, Commissioner Filer. I'm looking forward to the forum and hearing Commissioner Levin and folks from Stop AAPI Hate present. As you said, it's our first one, so I can't wait for this, and then the others we will get to produce as the work of the commission continues. So very exciting. Thank you. That concludes our subcommittee reports. I want to move on now to commissioner announcements to see if any commissioners have any announcements they would like to make. I'm not going to call on you each individually, so if you will raise your hand if you have any announcements. Commissioner Filer. You're on mute, Commissioner Filer.
All right. I just wanted to say that we are having at UCLA our UCLA WOW Mental Health Summit. We have sold out with 1,500 people attending, and I'm very excited that we're able to bring in high school students and college students for free to understand and get the support in the mental health struggles that are happening in our state and our country nationally. We are in a mental health crisis. So we're very fortunate to have Oprah as our interviewer, and we have the Surgeon General coming in, and we will have a panel of students also sharing what's really going on with the mental health crisis.
Thank you, Commissioner Filer. Before we move on to the other commissioner announcements, I forgot to do one thing at the end of the subcommittee reports, which was to see if there was any public comment. So is there any public comment? My apologies. Is there any public comment around the subcommittee reports? Alec, is there any written public comment?
I don't see any written public comment or hands
Or
raised.
hands
in
raised.
Zoom.
Okay, well, thank you. Let's move back to announcements. Vice Chair Salcedo.
Yes, thank you so much to everyone for the amazing reports. But I want to just make a couple of announcements. One is that on May 4th, sorry, the state of California is launching the California versus Hate Resource Line and Network, or California versus Hate. There will be a press conference and the west steps of the Capitol in Sacramento. So obviously everybody's invited if you have the ability and the opportunity to come. And I also want to make an announcement that we as an organization recently purchased a piece of property, and we are in the process of building a state-of-the-art multi-purpose, multi-service space here in Los Angeles, and we're about to make history. And so I just want to share those news with you, and and I'm so grateful that I get to be part of this group of people and that we're all together making history. So thank you again so much.
Thank you, Commissioner Salcedo, for that announcement. Commissioner Damsky, you had your hand raised before, did you?
It was a mistake. Thank you.
Okay, no worries. Commissioner Levin.
Thank you so much. As I said, I'm going to be leaving the university so I could focus more on the public policy aspects and working with this wonderful commission. And we have a great team that will be doing wonderful things. I'm sure you'll be dealing with them in the future as well. Related to that, on May 11th, I am doing my farewell address on campus. I got some other lectures in different boring parts of the world where I reside, but this is not one of them. The African American Precinct Reporter newspaper is one of the big co-sponsors. So if any of you are around San Bernardino around lunchtime, May 11th, they're still getting all the details down. Please feel free to come by. We'll be showing some of the research, some of the latest research that we have out there. And additionally, the big report that we have on the latest data will be out soon. But again, and this is what's important. And what I always told our staff and our assistant directors is the data is the star with all its imperfections. And again, I just want to reiterate, we have to understand that exactly as Commissioner Salcedo said, when we see this open, brazen type of prejudice out there, it collects in various places at varying depths and various types of amorphous references, right? As we know with the anti-Semitism, the references to Soros, we see it all the time. When Tucker Carlson had his Caravan Festival during the summer of 2018, we saw a multi-year high in anti-Latino hate crime. And by the time it went down into the fall election time and the Leadership Conference on Civil Rights, disclaimer, I'm part of their umbrella work, came out with a report talking about these election seasons. Commissioner Salcedo is exactly right. The things that are getting experienced on the street and in personal interactions, it broke my heart when you said it's basically almost a daily basis when you face harassment. And I know it when I do these talks, folks come out and say, if you ever get in a position of any kind of authority, please speak out on our behalf. And not only that, we have a vice chair. What a wonderful situation we are in to respond to this. But we have seen, not only in 36 states, we've seen scores and scores on the state level, and it goes into communities of anti-trans, anti-gender non-conforming, and a rollback in protections of various rights relating to identity and association. And what I am saying to you is we saw it as we saw this increase in these protests, these increases in bills, these increases in this invective online. We are now talking about 3 of the 5 biggest increases that we've collected across the nation's major cities relate to LGBTQ mixed, relate to gender nonconforming, and transgender. And what I think is so interesting is we still have that base level of prejudice against these anchor groups that we've seen, but now it's diversifying and fragmenting. So we see a big increase in anti-Black over the last couple of years. It moderates in 2022, and then what comes up? Other race, the biggest leader. So we'll be presenting that data, and I also just want to congratulate. I won't go into all their names, but all the commissioners that I see around doing wonderful things from DC to the West Coast. I see it too, and I am so proud to be sitting on this commission with all of you, and I would be remiss if I would not be thanking the wonderful and indefatigable Alec, who has done such wonderful work, not only with our committee, but with all the other committees. God bless you, and also thank you to the staff of the Civil Rights Division. I'm going to tell you something in closing. You know, we have things about different states. In our state, we have the laws that protect people, but we have the California Angels in the civil rights, not the baseball team, in the Civil Rights Division and on this commission, who are making sure, and I want to speak to these communities, you are welcome in the state of California. I don't care what's going on in the rest of the country. We will make an assiduous effort to hear you, to protect your rights, and to help assist with legislation that will make sure that your dignity, that your right to safety, expression, and association are protected. And I couldn't have a better team of people to work with. Thank you all on this commission, and thank you all in the Civil Rights Division, particularly those that don't get their names all over the place, that are working day to day to make sure that residents in this state, irrespective of whether they're homeless, what their identities, associations, backgrounds, or origins are protected and entitled to the safety and dignity that civil law should allow and do when it's working at its best. Thank you all for doing that.
Thank you, Commissioner Levin. Commissioner Che.
Thank you for the opportunity to make an announcement. I think we have already shared that we are coming out with a groundbreaking civil rights report, and we're so thankful that you're allowing our team members to be able to present. I wanted to provide a little bit of context that, as you may know, Stop API Hate became a leading aggregator for community members to report everyday racism that they encounter, a majority of which are non-criminal, but harmful. And we also saw a trend of potential civil rights violations in the schools, in the workplace, discrimination in private businesses. And so this survey, and also we've never said that our data is nationally representative, although we have received reports from all 50 states. And unfortunately, California has, close to 40% of the 11,000 plus incidents. So this survey and report was done in partnership with NORC at the University of Chicago, and it is nationally representative. And it also, we made a great effort to include the experiences of Pacific Islanders. And so we're really pleased to be able to share that. If you want a sneak peek before the community forum, I will share information on the 2 virtual briefings that we will have on May 9th and May 10th. And it will also include our research, but also recommendations and the role of government in protecting the civil rights of all. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Commissioner Che. Commissioner Levin, for the events that you mentioned, please make sure to get that info to Alex so he can send it to the whole commission, including commissioners who are not present at the moment. Commissioner Filer.
I just forgot to mention really quickly that we are going to rely on all of you for the public forum to get our flyer and our letter out to all of the communities that you are involved with or that you think would benefit from attending the public forum. So we're going to lean on you to ensure that we get as many people in attendance so that we really are providing that voice and opportunity to our full state.
Thank you, Commissioner Filer, and thanks everyone for your report outs and your announcements. I now want to move to agenda item number 7, which is public comment on items not on the agenda. So if there is any public comment for items that are not on the agenda, Alec, is there any written comments?
There are no written comments.
And is there any hands raised to do a live public comment?
Looks like we have one public comment from Greg DeGier. So,
welcome back, Greg. You have 3 minutes.
Welcome, thank you. There were 3 recommendations, requests that I'd made earlier that I wanted to repeat, and then one more comment that all have to do with public participation in one way or another. One was, I was going to suggest that while there is no legal requirement that the subcommittee meetings be open, that it would be a very productive thing to allow the public to at least listen and perhaps even comment on the discussions of the subcommittees, because obviously their recommendations are going to be considered seriously by the full commission. Second one was that the charge of the commission includes appointing non-member expert advisors to the subcommittees to advise, and hope that you will develop a process for making that happen. Third, and this is that the statutory charge of the commission includes advising the legislature, and of course that was one of the reasons our organization and many others supported creating the commission. And I hope, and I'm sorry to see there's no report from on that this month, and I hope that you will consider looking at and taking positions on the bills that are in existence for the 2023-24 session of the legislature. The final one is just a comment that I noticed that when I signed on today, there was a requirement to give an email address to register. That goes contrary to the Bagley-Keene Open Meeting Act, which is that any person can attend and observe without having to register their name or any other information. So I hope you'll change that in the future. And lastly, there's I won't go through them now, but there's a long list, a fairly long list of reports from earlier commissions and various bodies that I think would be useful for the commission to see. I will only mention the one that's least likely to need a mention, which is the Stanford Law and Brennan Center report. And I'd like to get get a list of those to whoever I should get them to for your information.
Thank you, Greg. You can provide a list of that to the commission email address, which is csh@CalCivil. Has it been changed to Cal Civil Rights, Alec, or is it still the old?
Cal Civil Rights, correct. I'll
At
send it in the chat.
calcivilrights.ca.gov, and that email goes directly to Alec, Greg. So you can send that to him. That would be great.
Thanks.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment?
There appears to be no other public comment.
Great, thank you. And thank you, Greg, for your public comment. From the commissioners, are there any other future agenda item or any future agenda items beyond the ones that we've already talked about, which is we will have the community forum at the next meeting. We will also have a version of hopefully a final version of the report for the commission to approve. All right, thank you. We are at 10:30 a.m. and I will entertain a motion to adjourn this commission meeting. Commissioner Che? Commissioner, moved by Commissioner Che. Is that a second from you, Vice Chair Salcedo?
Yes.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor of adjourning, please say aye.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? Abstentions? All right, everyone, we are adjourned at 10:32 a.m. on Wednesday, April the 26th. Thank you, and we will meet at our next commission meeting next month. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day, and thank you to members of the public for joining.
Well
Thank you.
done, Chair. Well done.
Yes, thank you for your leadership.
Thank you.